Why don't you just build with wood?
Build what?
Like steps.
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't think of that.
Our adventure begins on a brand new map with our two adventurers, Treesforall and Jack Don't Care. Their mission? To find the fabled Woodland Mansion and the treasure it holds. But first, they must acquire food before starvation brings their journey to an abrupt end. As they pack the few belongings they have, they construct boats to begin their search for a nearby village. And, alright, enough of that silly narrator stuff. Since we want to find a woodland mansion, we need to buy a map from a cartographer, and so our plan is to search for villages along the coast and set up shop when we find one in order to gather enough resources to travel to the mansion and defeat it. One thing that sort of took away from the experience in Minecraft was some of the lack of sound that they added into the game originally. So for example, when they first added the mine carts, there was no sound of the tracks of the cart moving along them. And when they added that, it totally changed the experience and made it just much more enjoyable. For some reason, they still haven't fixed the sound for boats yet. And so there's no sound of waves or paddling or anything. So the entire journey in the boats was actually kind of silent. That is one of the few criticisms I actually have for this game. While looking for villages, we also stopped a couple times to check out some roofed forests. That's where the mansions spawn, and we thought maybe we'd get lucky and find one there. Here's a particular island that I thought was pretty interesting because it had this huge overcropping coming out of a mountain. I always like when the caves spawn that way. And so you can just kind of see underneath it. We were exploring and checking out this mountain range as well as the roofed forest behind it. Eventually, it was time to run back to our boats and continue looking for villages. What is neat about Minecraft is the various mountain ranges you can find. I always enjoyed watching them from the safety of a boat. And now that there are even more rare biomes, these sort of add an extra level of excitement and challenge for those willing to adventure out and find them. While exploring another roofed forest, we also came upon a small fire caused by a above-ground lava pit. I always thought these were kind of neat to find, and they remind me of before they nerfed fire, when basically fire was infinite. If it could set fire to something, it would keep setting fire. And so eventually it would destroy your entire forest, and sometimes it would glitch your game because there would be so many fires going on that it couldn't handle it. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but eventually, this sort of system of following the coast, exploring roofed forests, getting back on our boats, exploring more coasts, we finally found a village. What was most interesting about this village to me is that they seem to have changed the algorithm a lot. So when we arrived, there was a bunch of docks and things already created on the water. Normally, they wouldn't even be close to water, and if they were, they'd be completely glitched up. Hey piggies, how'd you get up there? So I thought it was pretty random that these pigs were just hanging up on top of this roof. But there's actually more important things to look for. The loot, right? When you get to a village, you can find the smithy, and sometimes there's loot. So after I talked to some villagers, and it ends up being, there was way too many Fletchers and way too many clerics. Pretty annoying. But you know what? There was the cartographer, and that's all we really need. Inside the chest, I found 2 diamonds and 2 armor pieces. Pretty awesome for basically just starting off the game. I put the diamonds back to make sure they were safe, and we started sort of changing things up so that way we can turn this into our permanent base before we go seeking out the mansion. At this point, we found coal as fast as we could and made torches so we could torch the entire town. That's kind of our first level of defense against mobs at night. We prefer to be able to kind of do whatever we want, use the beds if we want to, or just explore at night and fight things. So we try to make sure that our village is secure as possible and basically that no mobs spawn at night and put us in any danger. One thing I want to bring up right now is this is a new world for us, and the reason why we're playing in a new world, not our old one, is because I thought there was some kind of glitch. When I found the cartographer in our old world, it was just so far away from the mansion that I was like, it must be broken, because our world is quite old. I think it's actually from 1.7. It must be 2 or 3 years old at this point, but we have a lot of stuff there. So we just really wanted to check out the mansion in this new world and see what it was like. But let me just explain what we were sort of leaving behind in our old world. Maybe I'll make a video about that soon too. In that world, we actually found a village and we sort of took it over. we've expanded it into basically a city. I mean, we didn't build an entire city. There are a ton of new villagers there now, 2 golems, and basically all of our supplies and everything we've done. We basically explored everything there is in that save file. The next step to finding the Woodland Mansion is to get a map. You have to get that from the cartographer, who will trade it to you once you get friendly enough with him. The quickest way to do that, I think, is to create a reed farm and trade him paper for emeralds. Eventually, he'll be willing to trade you the Woodland Mansion map for emeralds, and you'll probably have plenty of built up, too. One night, we decided to test our night defenses and make sure that everything was A-okay. We put up some fences around our village, and it seemed like everything was going pretty well. I jumped into a tower, and I noticed that there was a villager outside the barrier. I wasn't really too worried about him because we already had a bunch of clerics, but then a skeleton spawned, and it was time to get into action. Things didn't go super well in this fight, and it actually is pretty pathetic, but in my defense, I didn't have a shield, and that's kind of the counter for skeletons now, especially because they're so powerful at this point. They're so accurate. It is kind of funny how I laid a pretty good crit right there. You gotta go serpentine, you gotta go serpentine! And so I was eventually able to take this guy out. One skeleton, like just some terrible misses there, and he shoots the villager a couple times. But whatever. What is a lost torch and a few health? You know, not doesn't mean very much in the long run. Hopefully, I'll show off some of my skills a little better in the future. But oh my gosh, like, get in there, dude. Get in. There we go. Once he gets pushed past the barrier, he reacts normally, right? I always think it's kind of funny how the zombies kind of hang out around the edges of your base, kind of looking for a way in. It's kind of scary, and I really like how they sort of hoard together and do that now. It's also kind of interesting how the difficulty has changed over time, and how it actually increases when you stay in one spot now. I also like this little baby zombie running around. Treesforall isn't really kind to those guys. She doesn't really like them. They're kind of small and hard to hit, so I let him go. We traded with the cartographer and saved up enough emeralds to buy the Woodland Mansion map. Once again, it is insanely far away, and I show up as the tiniest dot on the map. Either way, we're going to explore until we find this thing. Minecraft Mansion Adventure is a new series I'm working on, and I will be updating at least weekly. Eventually, we will make it to the mansion, and this series will conclude. Until then, like, subscribe, and check out more Minecraft or other gaming videos.